Welcome to the Tesla Power Podcast. This is where we're building the Tesla energy community. We're covering solar panels, solar roof, and Powerwall for your home. I'm Aaron Brady, and today let's talk about competing home solar options. Let's talk about local utility approval. Let's talk about utilities assisting new homeowners, which is awesome. Let's talk about the Eversource Demand Response detail. And we've got cause for celebration and a lot more. Let's do it. So as per usual, we'll kick off the pod with community input. You can participate in tons of ways. Leave a comment below. Link your YouTube videos. You can call 203-816-5150, or you can email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. Of course, for those of you that are bold, that are ambitious, record an unlisted video question in the YouTube app. Send me that link so I can put your video question in the show. First up, we've got AJ Phillips. He notes that storage is no longer required to use solar during a grid down event. This is interesting. Let's read it. Quote, "You should look at Enphase IQ8. It allows solar panels to power the house during outages without a battery. They are microinverters and obviously can't power air conditioning and other high amp draws, but the technology is pretty amazing and it's setting a new standard," end quote. And it's awesome how fast the solar industry is changing and improving its technology. Microinverters, they're not new. But as far as I know, it's new for them to allow the system to be used on the grid without a battery. And if we do a quick Google search, it returns this article from nrgcleanpower.com, which confirms their ability to be used on the grid in case of a grid down situation. And they write further down, let's take it full screen actually, right here. While the Enphase IQ8 microinverters can't compete with batteries in their ability to store energy and pull on it when the panels are not creating electricity, they allow for homeowners to generate and consume solar power even during grid outages, end quote. And this is really where it breaks down for me, unfortunately. You know, you would be out of luck if this went overnight. And straight up, you're not going to be contributing to the stability of the grid if you're only producing during peak production hours in the middle of the day. In fact, this article makes an incorrect assertion. Let's take that full screen again. It says, quote, so the big question right here, what does all of this mean for homeowners? The best way to understand the value is to bring the value this brings is by looking at recent events. Recently, a huge ice storm hit Texas, causing a statewide energy failure. And as a result, even homes with solar panels installed on the roof lost access to electricity unless they had backup storage capabilities. With the Enphase IQ8, the microinverters would still have functioned by having the ability to limit energy capture to that which the home consumed. Everything would have been different if Texas homeowners with solar systems had this type of technology. They would have been some of the only people with access to power besides those with generators or backup storage, end quote. And it is true that users would have had access to power while the sun was up. It would not have been different if this tech was in use, though. The grid still would have gone down, and users with this tech would still have been without power to heat their homes, especially overnight when it gets really cool. So I am thrilled for companies to innovate, and you know, it's those kinds of innovations that are likely to push Tesla to improve their products. But I still see Tesla as having the best overall solution for the money when considering battery storage, the cost for their battery storage specifically. You know, the cost, you know, does double if you're talking about the solar roof. I mean, the price for sure does double, but it is such a great package and such a great value overall, you know, if you consider aesthetics and the whole ecosystem. Next, we've got Dave Sharma. He's in PTO Purgatory. Let's read what he's got. Quote, "I installed the same on March 18th, 2022 and faced the same problem from Orange and Rockland. They're forcing Tesla to install a gateway and not the sleek backup switch as it's not approved. Tesla is still waiting to get this from the warehouse, and it looks like this is going to delay the PTO by at least a few months. I have to get and come to install and resubmit paperwork. And when Tesla knows the utility would not approve the new concept, why gamble with it? Tesla is trying to cut costs, but the consumer is the one who's waiting to get PTO. Keep up the good work," end quote. And Dave, this is a rough direction for Tesla to take, not going to lie. I mean, local governments, they're just not as flexible as Tesla can be. And once you've installed the equipment, things can really get messed up and delays can last for months. And they may ultimately have to undo the work that they've already done, redo it the right way in order to get it approved. It's just tragic. I really feel for you. Now, during my last failed witness test, both the Tesla electrician and the utility inspector were glad to see a gateway on my system. It absolutely makes life better for everybody involved when the approved equipment is installed and no one's wasted their time to be on site for a test that has no hope of completing successfully. But I'm really sorry that you're caught in the middle here. Definitely take Kevin Giasulo's advice and keep both Tesla and your local inspector copied on follow-up communication. But here's to hoping that you get this sorted out quickly. But let us know how you get along. Next, we've got Rex Childs. He's got some advice on solar before you move in. This is kind of heartwarming. Let's read this. Quote, in regards to ordering solar before you move in, reach out to your electric company. I moved into my first home about 6 months ago during the colder months of the year, so my energy usage was down. Based on my bills, Tesla would only design me a system smaller than I believe I needed. One quick phone call to the power company, and they sent me an email the next day approving me for a system quite a bit larger than I was even expecting. When they looked at 5 years of energy usage at the house, as long as you get something in writing from a utility provider, like a simple email, then Tesla's happy to design a system based on that. And this is really great advice. Thank you for commenting, Rex. I expect the level of cooperation, it's going to vary dramatically from utility to utility. I think you let me know that you were with Florida Power and Light, and straight up, that is super surprising to me that they'd be so accommodating given their recent press, right? But I love hearing that you got approved for more than you thought you might. Couple of questions. Did you end up maxing out the system? Did you pair it with batteries in your design? But let us know, how Tesla ultimately packages this thing for you and how long they estimate before they can schedule an install. Congratulations on your pending project, though. That's really, really cool. All right, the Grain Doctor has a bit of bitter medicine for us, unfortunately. Let's read this. Quote, the payback for the interconnect is unfortunately not nearly as generous as you point out in your video. It is $225 per kilowatt hour averaged per event. So if you average 4 kilowatt hours back to the grid for each event, even if you have 30 events, you will be paid 225 times 4, which is only about $900, end quote. And it's not paid per event, which is really the tragedy here. It's paid for the average amount of energy that you give back per event. Ugh. I mean, it's way more reasonable, I guess, but you hear the sweet demand response. You hear you're paid per kilowatt hour. You start getting fantasies in your head about how amazing it's going to be. But $900 is not nothing. In fact, that is about 3 months of my average utility bill. 2 or 3 months, depending on how you calculate it. So nothing to sneeze at. And if you got that every year, that would pay for your batteries. So I think it would be totally worth it. I'm still jealous that you've got it and I don't. Hopefully one day I'll be able to get it and be able to brag along with you. All right, JunZhang has some awesome news to share. Let's read what he's got. Quote, Tesla Power Podcast, I finally, yesterday, got my inverter replaced. Today it generated 74 kilowatt hours. And now I can start my other projects. Change my oil furnace to heat pump and water heater to heat pump. Hopefully it's enough power for those upgrades, end quote. Congratulations, Jun. We would love to hear how the next phase of these projects progress. If you have an idea of how close this will be as far as consumption matching your production, let us know. Obviously you're going to use a lot more since you're moving from an alternative fuel. You're moving from oil to electricity. So your electricity usage is going to go up pretty significantly. So hopefully you're overproducing right now. And then, your water heater, a lot of people who have oil heat also use that furnace to heat their water. At my old house, it was split. So we had an electric water heater. But if you move from oil water heat to a heat pump water heat, even though it's going to be very efficient, it's going to use electricity where your old system, barely used any electricity. It just used it to spark up the flame. So super interesting to see how that goes. Keep us posted. Thank you to AJ Phillips, to Dave Sharma, Rex Childs, the Grain Doctor, JunZhang, all of you for your input. Let's hear from the rest of you. Send in your YouTube links, comment below, call 203-816-5150, or you can email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into the news. So this episode, we have, I think, 3 stories to cover. First up, we have a story from Inverse. They cover a home 1 year after solar roof install. Let's read a little quote from it. It says, "Today, Tesla's solar roof is leading the charge with an innovation of its own, cutting out the middle step between building the roof and installing the solar panels. Tesla's specially designed tiles mean anyone can outfit their home with what looks like a typical, if a bit glossy, roof that provides the house with power." But it goes on, it says that the few people that do own a solar roof say it has changed their life. Just like the New York Times predicted solar cells could, end quote. I mean, changed your life. I mean, that's, would I say it's changed my life? I mean, I suppose. I don't guess I'd be so dramatic, but hell yeah, I'm better looking, I'm smarter, my kids love me more. I mean, what I would say is most dramatic is how little I think about that system now that I've had it for a full year. This article is about a home in New Jersey. I happen to be in Connecticut, but their story's similar to my story, right? There was a little need for a new roof, a lot of aesthetic appreciation, a little energy security to push them over the edge. And the real kicker is we both spent a bit of a premium to get this product. Now, this is a very similar story to their cars, right? Tesla's cars have consumers spending a lot more than the bare minimum than, like they would normally buy for a car. Like, we were going to get a minivan, but we were going to not spend very much money at all. We're not going for the tippy top trim minivan, but we went for the Tesla, sedan, which was, probably twice the price of the minivan. So, all of us were reaching deep in our pockets and paying a lot more than we ever thought we would to get a product that straight up is even better than we thought it could be. And it keeps getting better with software updates. It's kind of crazy, but maybe I'm being a little dramatic. I love it as much as this owner does. That is for sure. I don't know that I've run across anyone actually that's been less than thrilled at the product. Basically, all of us love it. I mean, I guess if you take service aside, right? But I'm on a roll. We don't need to go into that right now. Let's just go over to the next article. This one is from Clean Technica. Clean Technica is reporting on a geology position at Tesla. They say, quote, "Tesla recently hired a geologist, which many see as a step in the direction of lithium and critical materials mining. There's no official announcement that Tesla will actually do its own mining, and there could be other reasons that it's hiring a geologist. It could be simply focusing on critical minerals and the supply chain in order to better understand potential suppliers and the market as a whole," end quote. I mean, it's still remarkable that they don't leave their fate in anyone else's hands. They're going to understand this, whether they're the ones that go and do the mining or not. It's not like they don't work with the wider industry. They're not trying to do everything themselves, but their partners, if they don't look like they're going to be able to meet Tesla's growth targets, then Tesla's going to go and do it themselves. They leave zero to chance. You got to admire that. They go on to point out that the lithium prices are insane. Let's go back full screen. I want to show you this chart. It's really kind of crazy. So you look back at 2014, lithium is nearly 20 times what it was back in 2014. From $4,600 up to $78,000, and that's even after the collapse in 2020. You can see it got all the way down to $6,800, and if it spiked up from $6,800 to $78,000, God, even if we're heading into a recession now, and that collapses again, you've got to see that the trajectory is still going to be insane once demand catches back up. So I think we all know that this isn't going to be getting any more reasonable over the next decade, right? We're in for some crazy times and probably in for more of a wild ride than we've had over the last couple of years going forward into the 2030s. All right, next we've got Business Observer in Florida reports on a homeowner that's adding a solar unit to their offering. Let's read this. Quote, "K Lifestyle Homes recently launched Solar Home Division. The Naples-based firm, in a statement, says it's responding to increased homebuyer requests for innovative building practices that address energy efficient, sustainability, and durability in new home construction," end quote. We're not talking about affordable housing here. The lowest price is $300,000, and they go into the millions. And I got to say, they're beautiful. They really look good. If I bring up the website here, I'll bring it full screen. What's interesting is they don't yet show the solar division on the website. Like even if you go over here to the site menu, you can see, designer series, signature series, custom homes, custom renovations, but they don't show anything about, energy intensive or environmental or anything like that. And critically, they don't show what vendors they might use in their designs or even show if this is going to include battery storage. So I'm a little bit disappointed on that, but I'd be willing to bet that they will have solar roof and battery storage from Tesla. What's undeniable is the trend toward efficiency, sustainability, and all of that will be supported by solar and batteries. It just makes sense. I mean, if you want any kind of energy assurance and you can afford it and you want it to look beautiful, the solar roof and battery is the way to go. So we've seen in recent episodes, this type of story is going to be a common refrain, as the economy starts switching en masse in this direction. And as it becomes more common, it will drive down market. So it's not always going to be super expensive, but the leading edge will be in the high end, and the solar roof makes a lot more sense in the high end. And even more sense when you're putting them into new builds rather than retrofits. So the reason I thought this story was so interesting is that Florida doesn't have a great net metering program. And Florida Power and Light isn't doing much to incentivize solar adoption just at a baseline. But still, we see these home builders adding solar to meet market demand. And straight up, this is the better way to roll out solar, I think. Rather than distorting the market with incentives at the budget consumer price point, we let the market drive high-end adoption that then drives business investment in that sector. This will build a stronger industry. It won't be ultra sensitive to government incentives or government programs to support the industry, like we've seen in Florida specifically and in California. And no matter what, that high-end solar market is gonna exist, even if net metering goes away. So I'm a fan, even though I can't afford this level of offering. God bless those that can afford it, and thanks to you guys for funding the growth in the industry in Florida and across the country. So that'll do it for the news. Let's take another quick break. When we come back, let's do the featured video. So this episode, we're taking a look at electric utilities through the farcical lens of John Oliver. Last Week Tonight is on HBO. John Oliver does a deep dive on a new subject each week. In this clip, he dives into the electric utilities incentives for generating profit. It's just a hard thing, I think, when incentives just aren't aligned very well. But there's another point that John Oliver makes in this video that I think is really worth taking a look at, because it's not just that the incentive is pitted against other suppliers like solar, residential solar owners like you and I, or some of the viewers of this channel, but that the incentive for them for profit is in their projects and how they get funded. As we learned from Rethink X, the levelized cost of electricity generation for these projects is overestimated, which makes this even worse. Utilities are incentivized to spend on large projects, and those projects will never pay for themselves. And in this example, will never even generate electricity. The issue isn't that utilities are evil. It's that the incentive structure is outmoded and is ultimately counterproductive. And there's more. What about those of us looking into solar for our homes? Well, we saw that last clip. They're actively working against us. Now, that's not something that we are surprised by, right? We've been talking about that on this channel for quite a while. And, it's just one thing. Like, you miss that one quote from the first clip that says, where John Oliver is pointing out that there are going to be those that are left behind, meaning those that can't get residential solar are left holding the bag for those huge projects that are just ridiculous, ill-conceived, dumb, wrongly incentivized, right? And the best you might hope for, the best, is that the utility might install grid-scale solar and battery storage, right? But this isn't likely to be distributed and doesn't give residential solar and battery storage owners an opportunity to participate in the market. Of course, Tesla is working on breaking this monopoly by becoming a utility in their own right. And they're not the only one. There are several virtual power plants using a variety of, solar, battery, and, solar generation and battery storage manufacturers to offer this capacity to the grid. And because utilities aren't incentivized to maintain existing infrastructure, we might see utility scale capacity declining over time, even if it's renewable, because they're not going to maintain their current assets. All they're going to do is try to build new ones. And I mean, it doesn't mean that it can't work. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be the right mix long term. It's just that, we need to see those incentives aligned. So what's clear, solar and wind, battery storage, all of those are going to be tremendously more cost competitive than nuclear, like the example we had just heard. And, there'll be a larger part of the mix over time, just inevitably. Now, that time will come a lot more quickly if we can just align these incentives and get stakeholders all moving in the same direction. Anyway, ran over. Let us take a look at recent production. If I get the app open and start broadcasting, we can take a look. It's been very interesting. I mean, I've been saying for a long time that the days are getting longer and production is getting better, but actually production started going down a little bit. And the biggest culprit is pollen. So there's an orangish green sheen over the roof. And I've noticed production has come down from the 80s and 70s into about the 60s, something like that. So if we bring up the app, you can see here, we can go into energy. And we just rolled over a new day, but yesterday, excellent generation curve. This is almost 70 kilowatt hours, which is really great, right? And it's been basically that for the last few days. 60 kilowatt hours here, mid 60s. What was this? 75, outstanding. And you'll see our consumption has been increasing a little bit too. So if you look back, we have 49s, 50s, 50. Now this is 70, but this is 70 because I had a coworker that came down from Canada. He drove Tesla Model Y, and he's got beta, which was awesome to experience. My first time seeing that. But he charged at our house before he took off for Canada. But, why is it going from this 50 up to the 80s? So if you've got a guess, put your guess in the comments and we'll reveal in the next podcast. But let's go check the brother-in-law system to see how it's comparing. Since he's got that traditional solar system, and you can see that it's really close. They're also in the 60s and the 70s. In fact, if we look at the month, it just turned over, so we don't get to see it. Anyway, they were at 1.66 megawatt hours. I was just looking before I started recording. I wish there was a way for me to see it in his app, but as I said before, his app sucks. So if we go back to the Tesla app, I'll pull up our monthly generation numbers for last month. And it's quite good. In fact, we're right on their heels. They generated 1.66 megawatt hours, and I think we were at 1.62 megawatt hours, which is outstanding because we've got a lot of panels on the north side of our roof, a lot of active solar tiles on the north side of our roof, and that, it's just suboptimal. We don't have the benefit of the optimal arrangement that they have in their traditional solar panels. So yeah, 1.62 we generated in the month of May versus their 1.66. So right at the, very even between the two. And I've been pointing out that we have a 1-year review coming up. I promise it'll be in the next episode 58. But for a sneak peek, let's take a look at our utility bills over the last 2 months. So this one's for May. You can see $12.84. Encouraging, right? In June, same thing, $12.84. And that might be a little confusing, but don't forget that it never goes to zero. We'll always pay a connection fee at a minimum. And the rationale, of course, is that we need to pay for the line to connect to the grid since the utility maintains those lines. But really looks good. I think this 1 year is going to turn out a lot better than I thought. I also thought that I had finally gotten some net metering, but that doesn't happen to be the case. It's just that I didn't pull anything from the grid for 2 months because my system was producing so much and my batteries were able to cover the rest of my consumption. And all of that is because I still don't have PTO. It's friggin' crazy. But, you know, it's hard for me to feel the urgency when things are going so well. Kevin Giasulo had pointed out that it notes the amount of generation that's being netted in each month, and we don't see that in the bill at all. But even though I don't have PTO, you know, I find it hard, right? Why make a fuss if I'm getting all the benefit that I need? But I've got to get that last T crossed. I just want to get it across the finish line. Got to finish this thing up. So that'll do it for episode 57 of the Tesla Power Podcast. Please use my referral code. You can save some money on a solar roof or on solar panels. You can go to ts.la/62310 to place your order. And I'm Aaron Brady. I'm your Tesla Residential Energy Community Organizer. Let's do this again on the next video.